Hello and welcome again to Truths We Believe in. I'm glad you joined us today, and I hope you've been following us on YouTube. There are several installments that we have of the series that is ongoing on the truths we believe in. Around this time, the reason why we've selected this particular theme or series is because a lot of believers are getting confused on what exactly and where they stand as far as the things of God are concerned, or what is God's perspective concerning what is going on. And so we picked up that series to try and enlighten us to understand what our position should be as believers, as a nation of God that should not be entangled with the anxieties and the chaos and the fears of the nations of this world. Today, I want to share with you still about the sovereignty of God. And I want us to pick two different passages of scripture and briefly, and I hope that this can clarify some of the things that we believe in as believers. And the first is drawn from the book of Romans and chapter 1 from verse 18, running all through to verse 21. But I won't read the whole of it. I will read in particular verse 20, which really catches my interest, and I hope that we can elaborate a little bit on what it means. It reads as follows: For since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that men are without excuse. This is an interesting passage of scripture, and especially if you look at the narrative where Paul is talking about the wrath of God being revealed from heaven, and he talks about the subject of such wrath. It is against ungodliness and unrighteousness. He doesn't talk about unrighteousness of animals or plants or other creation, but unrighteousness of anthropos, that is the human beings that are made in the image of God. And he talks about a particular category of human beings who suppress the truth of God in unrighteousness. Now, so there's a wrath of God that is being revealed. But if you go down to verse 20, he says, the reason why the wrath of God is being revealed, it is because men reject and dismiss the self-evidence of God's sovereignty. So in verse 20, Paul tells us that since the creation of the world, since the beginning of the heavens and the earth, Scripture says that God's invisible attributes are clearly seen. God has made himself self-evident. And what this means is that he existed before the creation, before the beginning. Such, if God's holiness and God's sovereignty has been revealed or is clearly seen, and this is since creation, it can only mean that he existed before the creation. He made the creation. God is self-existent. He is not accountable to anybody. He alone is self-existent, and he owes nobody any explanation of his power and his glory and majesty and his origin. He's in need of nothing, and he needs nothing from you. He needs nothing from me. Such is the sovereignty of our God. If you go back, so there's here that the attributes of God are known, and later on Paul talks about two things that he refers to, the attributes that he speaks to in particular here, and these are the eternal power of God, and the second thing is the divinity of God, the fact that he's a transcendent being, far above human beings. He has made himself evident or self-evident to all of us, and the reason that none of us will have any excuse on the judgment day, it is because we have been given every information we need about God by creation itself. If you look at the book of Psalms in chapter 46 and Psalms chapter 19, scripture here talks, I encourage you to go and read the passage from verse 1 up to verse 5. And here, scripture talks about how the heavens declare the glory of God. The heavens, they show his handiwork. Every day, scripture says in verse 2 of Psalms 19, they utter speech, and night after night, they reveal his knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. In other words, creation continues to tell us of their God who is sovereign and transcendent and majestic, and they parade and sing glorious songs to him every morning. And yet we who are made in the image of God, we claim that we do not know him. We have no excuse. The sovereignty of God is self-evident. It is manifested in creation, from the creation of the minute animals and plants to the galaxies in heaven. God has made all of those, and they know it, and they declare it. And we know that he is sovereign. We refuse to worship him. We will have no excuse. Our God is sovereign, and even under the current circumstances, we shall worship him as such. He is a sovereign God. We must worship him as such.